Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2012, In Their Skin. Without any further, let's get started. The movie begins with a car chase sequence that shows a man running in terror until his legs give out and he falls to the ground. The driver then takes out a shotgun from inside his car and kills the man in cold blood. The plot now changes to the following scene, where we are introduced to our main characters, Mark, Mary, their son Brendan, and their family dog, Harris. The three of them are a family of three driving to their vacation cottage. When the family stops at a petrol station, the attendant recognizes them right away because they frequently visited the area for vacations. The attendant quickly offers his sympathies for the recent accident-related death of Mark and Mary's daughter. As Mark and the attendant are speaking, Mary heads to the clearing behind the gas station when she sees her son Brendan running off. Mary, however, notices a person rushing through the woods and wonders if it's Brendan. It turns out that Brendan hasn't been straying that far out of the way for the entire time. The three set out again, and after driving for several hours, they eventually reach cottage. Mark wears a gloomy expression when he discovers two small crocs that belong to his late daughter. That evening, the three were taking a stroll when all of a sudden, a car pulled up and pointed its headlights menacingly at them. The family finds this strange, but they ignore it as Mark is going to approach the car and it drives away. Mark and Mary attempt to have an intimate moment after tucking Brendan in for the night. But Mary breaks down in tears because she is still grieving over her daughter. They awkwardly fall to sleep close to one another. Till the following morning, when soft banging sounds awaken them. When Mark goes downstairs to investigate, he discovers a third family gathering firewood outside on the porch. They quickly apologize for waking Mark up and identify themselves as Bobby, Jane, and Jared. Since they live just next door, they chose to give free chopped firewood as a sign of good faith. They added that they would love to visit for lunch. Since the family is actually interested in getting to know one another, Mark immediately consents to this. Mark tells Mary that he met their new neighbors and they'd want to get together for lunch when he heads back upstairs. So Mary doesn't appear to appreciate this idea. They come all the way here to enjoy some peace and quiet, but she reluctantly agrees.
Yes.
As scheduled, the Sokovsky family showed up for lunch later that day. But rather than knocking on the door first as a regular person would, they enter the residence right away. Soon after, the Sokovsky family was welcomed by Mark's family. Bobby Sokovsky casually relates a story of a family that lived here before Mark and Mary arrived. He calls them the Smiths and claims that they have since vanished without a trace. Bobby and Jane can be seen actively inquiring more and more intimate questions about Mark and Mary's life during the day, including about their family history and the identity of the little girl in their family photo. Mary sadly acknowledges that her daughter was the one who died. Mark mentions in one of the conversations that Sokovsky is a Polish name, so he strikes up a conversation with Jane about Poland. But Jane is strangely taken aback by this inquiry and answers tensely, explaining that she is just of Polish ancestry, but has never visited the country. Since the visit is expected to continue into the evening, the two families choose to have supper together. Jared requests to see Brendan's room at this point. The two lads go upstairs to play games together as a result. Mark continues to inquire about the Smiths, the family Bobby had earlier in the day mentioned after the boys have left. Bobby remarks that he didn't know much about the Smiths other than the fact that they looked like hicks and that they were poor individuals living in their car, so he advised them to go.
Looking for what everyone wants.
After that, Bobby and Jane start asking increasingly personal and unsettling questions, such what Mark and Mary do for their living and whether or not they have another home elsewhere, where it is. Furthermore, they're curious as to what precisely happened with their daughter. Bobby and Jane start asking them all sorts of inappropriate questions, which makes Mark and Mary uncomfortable. Brendan and Jared are playing games upstairs, and Brendan keeps winning. But out of the blue, an enraged Jared holds a knife to his throat. Brendan lets out a cry and rushes downstairs, but just as quickly, Jared starts acting upset too and rushes up to his parents, accusing Brendan of punching him, something Brendan denies. Mary senses something is wrong when she discovers the red mark on Brendan's throat as they are hugging. Mark announces that it's time to call it a night after reaching the same decision. Mark is adamant that they go, despite Bobby and Mary's assurances that it's just youngsters having fun and that they can put things right. When the Sokovsky family eventually decides to part ways, Bobby persistently tries to persuade Mark to allow their families to reunite until Mark becomes irritated.
I'm sure Jane will put on quite a feast.
Mark expresses his anger and aggravation on a vase of flowers that Jane gave him after the neighbors have left. Unseen to him, Bobby is spooky watching Mark from the window just outside. Mark informs his wife later that evening that he feels insecure here and would prefer to go back to the city. In addition, he informs her that his brother Toby will be visiting the cottage. Mary finds this news upsetting as the purpose of their trip to this vacation home is to rebuild the gap in their family that their little daughter's death has led to. The couple then went back inside to gather the shattered vase's fragments together. While the dog barks, Mark lets Harris go to relieve himself. However, shortly afterward, they hear an unexpected gunshot outside, and we then spot a figure in the woods.
Is it them?
Scared, Mary and Brendan head upstairs to hide while Mark draws his gun, locks the doors, and prepares to handle whatever situation that comes. Mary seeks for her phone upstairs so she may call for assistance, but she can't seem to find it. In the meanwhile, Mark notices their car's tires are slashed when he looks outside. When Mark notices Jared strolling aimlessly outdoors, he goes to investigate and retrieves the dog collar that Jared had dropped to the ground. Rather insane, according to Jared, Bobby is currently burying Mark's dog. He then throws a rock, shattering one of their windows. He then attempts to hit Mark with the second rock, but misses. When Mark lets Jared go and enters the house again, it turns out that one of the rocks that Jared the child was throwing through the window was really Mark's damaged phone. Mary tells him that her phone is missing and that Jared probably stole it. The husband gives her his gun and orders her to hide with their son while he goes to take care of the situation. He takes a kitchen knife with him and heads to a nearby house to seek assistance. Jared appears to be inside the cottage already, playing video games. Not long after, we learn that Bobby has also entered the house. In addition, he has captured Mark and is using it as a ploy to get Mary and Brendan out of there. The main characters are seated in the living room by the evil neighbors, and as Bobby goes away into another room, Jane reveals that Jared is actually her brother rather than her son. Bobby had rescued them from an abusive home, and she has been following him ever since because she fears she won't have anywhere else to go if she leaves him.
Yes.
And then, as if on time, Bobby enters. It's at this point that he reveals that his true name is Mark, not Bobby, and that the three of them have been robbing people of their identities for a living. They want to take Brendan, Mary, and Mark's identities. Suddenly, they hear a car outside. It's Toby, Mark's brother, who has finally made his way to the cottage. Toby is greeted joyfully by Bobby, Jane, Mark, and Mary, who act as though everything is okay. After an unpleasant meeting with the Sokovskys, Brendan is being held captive upstairs by the little psycho. Toby excuses himself to get into the car and get his stuff, just as Bobby unexpectedly shoots him, clearly infuriating Mark. Mary tells him that he still has a wife and child to take care of when he challenges Bobby to shoot him. Then, just as we start to question how the perplexing montage of Mark, Mary, and Brendan going about their oddly typical lives fits into the story, it is revealed that Bobby, Jane, and Jared have been observing them the entire time. They use weapons to force Mark and Mary to follow their idealized, wealthy lifestyle so they can mimic it once they are killed. Not long after, Jane and Jared exit the room so that Jane can start trying on Mary's outfits. Following their departure, Bobby strikes Mark with the butt of his shotgun, forcing him to remain seated as he sexually assaults Mary. For a moment, Mary appears to comply, till, at last, she stabs him in the chest. They remove the rifle from him while Mark holds his face. However, Brandon enters while putting Brendan at gunpoint, so it won't be that simple.
No, please!
Thus, the family falls into the villains once more and sit in the living room. Bobby somehow makes it through his stabbing wound, and Jane is now wearing one of Mary's outfits. Jane and Bobby start calling one another Mary and Mark. Bobby then takes out a newspaper cutout and says that he has been hunting for Mark and Mary since he read the news report about their daughter's death, because they are the ideal family for Bobby, Jane, and Jared to assume different identities from.
Our house.
Jared approaches Mark while playing his gun around, giving Mark the chance to steal the gun from him and accidentally shoot Bobby in the leg. He then raises his gun to threaten Jane, but she declines to take down the shotgun. Then, Mary makes the same question in a more polite manner, getting Jane to listen to her. Meanwhile, Bobby is too proud to yield and has nothing left to lose. He gets ready to attack Mark, so Mark shoots him dead. The next scene shows Bobby's lifeless body being taken away by an ambulance, while the cops take Jane and Jared into custody. Before Mary is taken away by the police car, Jane and Mary have a brief eye contact. When the film closes, Mark and Mary are seen by a marriage counselor who appears happier and more prepared to move on with their life. Thanks for watching, and remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.